Hearing loss, also known as hearing impairment, or anacasis, is a partial or total inability to hear. An affected person may be described as hard of hearing. A deaf person has little to no hearing. Hearing loss may occur in one or both ears. In children, hearing problems can affect the ability to learn language, and in adults it can cause work-related difficulties. In some people, particularly older people, hearing loss can result in loneliness. Hearing loss can be temporary or permanent. Hearing loss may be caused by a number of factors, including genetics, aging, exposure to noise, some infections, birth complications, trauma to the ear, and certain medications or toxins. A common condition that results in hearing loss is chronic ear infections. Certain infections during pregnancy, such as rubella, may also cause problems. Hearing loss is diagnosed when hearing testing finds that a person is unable to hear 25 decibels in at least one ear. Testing for poor hearing is recommended for all newborns. Hearing loss can be categorized as mild, moderate, severe, or profound. Half of hearing loss is preventable. This includes by immunization, proper care around pregnancy, avoiding loud noise, and avoiding certain medications. The World Health Organization recommends that young people limit the use of personal audio players to an hour a day in an effort to limit exposure to noise. Early identification and support are particularly important in children. For many hearing aids, sign language, cochlear implants and subtitles are useful. Lip reading is another useful skill some develop. Access to hearing aids, however, is limited in many areas of the world. Globally, hearing loss affects about 10% of the population to some degree. It causes disability in 5% and moderate to severe disability in 124 million people. Of those with moderate to severe disability, 108 million live in low and middle income countries. Of those with hearing loss, it began in 65 million during childhood. Those who speak sign language and are members of deaf culture see themselves as having a difference rather than an illness. Most members of deaf culture oppose attempts to cure deafness, and some within this community view cochlear implants with concern as they have the potential to eliminate their culture. The term hearing impairment is often viewed negatively as it emphasizes what people cannot do. Definition: hearing loss exists when there is diminished sensitivity to the sounds normally heard. The terms hearing impairment or hard of hearing are usually reserved for people who have relative insensitivity to sound in the speech frequencies. Deafness is defined as a degree of loss such that a person is unable to understand speech even in the presence of amplification. In profound deafness, even the loudest sounds produced by an audiometer may not be detected. In total deafness, no sounds at all, regardless of amplification or method of production, are heard. Speech perception, another aspect of hearing, involves the perceived clarity of a sound rather than its amplitude. In humans, that aspect is usually measured by tests of speech perception. These tests measure one's ability to understand speech, not to merely detect sound. There are very rare types of hearing loss which affect speech understanding alone. Hearing standards: human hearing extends in frequency from 20 to 20,000 Hz, and in amplitude from 0 dB to 130 dB or more. 0 dB doesn't represent no sound at all, but rather the softest sound an average unimpaired human ear can hear. 130 dB represents the threshold of pain, but the ear doesn't hear all frequencies equally well. Hearing sensitivity peaks around 3000 Hz. There are many qualities of human hearing besides frequency range and amplitude that can't easily be measured quantitatively. But for many practical purposes, normative hearing is defined by a frequency versus amplitude graph, or audiogram, charting sensitivity thresholds of hearing at defined frequencies. because of the cumulative impact of age and exposure to noise and other acoustic insults. Typical hearing may not be normative. ANSI 7029-2000, BS 6951 Acoustics, Statistical Distribution of Hearing Thresholds as a Function of Age. ANSI S 3.5-1997 Speech Intelligibility Index, Signs and Symptoms. Difficulty using the telephone, loss of directionality of sound, difficulty understanding speech, especially women and children, difficulty in speech discrimination against background noise, sounds or speech becoming dull, muffled or attenuated, need for increased volume on television, radio, music and other audio sources. Hearing loss is sensory, but may have accompanying physiological symptoms. Pain or pressure in the ears, punctured eardrum, effusion in the middle ear, otitis externa, inflammation or infection of the ear canal or eardrum, eustachian tube dysfunction or inflammation. There may also be accompanying secondary symptoms. Hyperacusis, heightened sensitivity to certain volumes and frequencies of sound, resulting from recruitment. Tinnitus, ringing, buzzing, hissing or other sounds in the ear when no external sound is present. Vertigo and disequilibrium. Tympanophonia, abnormal hearing of one's own voice and respiratory sounds, usually as a result of a patulous eustachian tube. Disturbances of sight, speech or swallowing.